It probably has stories that are similar to those. The compañera decided, she took a decision that many of us don't, because she decided to stand up and fight back, to bring her story out to the world, and to let us know that we have to struggle, we have to organize. She's a compañera we've come into contact with over the years. She has a very powerful presentation. She writes a new book, Encourage, every day, and she's here with us today from Los Angeles, compañera Aloni Bonilla. Let's welcome her.
Good afternoon, everyone. Aloni, and I'm very blessed to be here to share with you all a little bit about what happened. It's almost a little over 2 years ago. So I'm going to just start with taking you back to March 21st, 2012. I was a university student studying mathematics to teach at a high school level, and I was about 3 months from graduating with my bachelor's. And I was in the middle of finals week, and it wasn't unusual for me to be up past midnight during a week of exams. And I'll share this poem to really take you back to that morning or late night on a Wednesday. I was all alone, driving from my home, seatbelt, headlights, speed limit, just minding my own. Stopped by the police. Where's your ID? Have you been drinking? No. But what was on my breath resulted in arrest, taken to a hospital for another test. 240-pound officer standing, waiting on the doctor. I signed the consent, then asked a question. This filled him with frustration. The look inside his eyes, mean, dark, the look of lies. It happened so suddenly, he grabbed me, pulled me, then slammed me, pinned me to the ground. I didn't make a sound, footsteps all around. Nurses crowded just to stand and stare. Their feelings weren't there. My eye was bleeding internally. I couldn't see anything. I felt unsafe, so small, curled into a ball. I was kidnapped, then strapped to the back of the seat. I couldn't even breathe. Help, I need a doctor. Where are you taking me? Shut up. Stop faking. You were resisting. I said, you were resisting. Incriminate a victim to justify your actions. I can't let this go. Knowing you're still on patrol, I challenge the status quo, but the courts protect their own. And where do we complain? To the same organization that abuses us? It's like a game. These players have no shame. They cover up the cracks. They got each other's backs. It's not about the facts. It's about where you're at. What you know, gotta say, there's something wrong with that. But I pray for you, the DA, the judge, and everyone you lied to. You can't hide from the truth, 'cause God's light shines right through. Put this in full, before you play it, if you can pause, and just put it on, so it's a little blurry here, and this is a video directly from the hospital where the incident occurred. And so this is, if you could like turn the volume up a little bit.
And then it's over, and that's when he's telling me, who do you think people believe, me or you? And so I said, you know, I would give it to you. He pauses and grabs me, lifts me out of the chair, slams me to the wall.
In 2012, Aloni Bonilla was stopped for a DUI investigation by a California Highway Patrol officer, but it ended in a violent altercation.
The initial preliminary screening device did capture traces of alcohol that were over the legal limit, and I was transported to their station for further tests. With the breathalyzer, didn't capture any samples, so then they transported me to a hospital where no samples were taken because the officer and I were waiting for the nurses, and during that wait, he acted out of line
The video surveillance video you see here was taken in the hospital. Officer Jose Ramirez can be seen approaching Bonilla and pushing her against the wall, and then forcing her onto the floor. Court documents indicate that the officer said Bonilla tried to headbutt and that she was waving her arms around. But Bonilla says the video tells a different story, that she's a victim of police brutality.
If you match the video to his police report, it's just like you'd be, shocked at when does this actually happen? I want this on record. I want them to say, like in his writing, like I'm glad he wrote, it looks like you lunged at him. It clearly looks like you lunged at him. You clearly don't see anything in that video. But take a look at my legs. Take a look at my legs across. Look at him approaching me. You can see that. Not so clear. You can see him leaning over, like silhouettes.
A California Highway Patrol investigation exonerated the officer of Bonilla's allegations because, quote, they were not substantiated.
I remember this event every single day because it's part of my life now. It, interrupted my career path, my working ability, to find work. It physically, has damaged me. At that time, I knew I suffered an injustice, and I knew what happened to me was wrong.
Challenged to see the officer's police report in court, but the judge did not allow the video to be used as evidence because they had gaps that were several seconds long throughout the video.
So when did you decide to publish the video?
So once it was excluded, I went home, I created a YouTube account, I created a Facebook account just for this trial, just for this case, and I put it up. Because if the courts weren't going to acknowledge my video, then the media will. I want to know what the public thinks about this, video. That's why I put it up online. I want people's confidence, and I want all that.
What do you say to people that say you get yourself into this? There were traces of alcohol in your birth certificate.
I would say that this is more than just a DUI case. This is a case about excessive force. This guy is 220 pounds, 6 foot tall. I took this case to trial and I lost. I had to serve 17 days in LA County Jail for the lies that this officer told. And now I'm fighting in the appellate division in LA Superior Court so that these charges can be reversed or I can be granted a new trial.
Bonilla has obtained a court-appointed public appeals attorney so that she can challenge the judge's decision to exclude the video. In the meantime, she's active on YouTube and Facebook to bring more attention to her story.
So that's how I found out about Union del Barrio and Stop LAPD Spying Coalition and Enter Jails. Because I did this, I did all this as soon as it happened. I wasn't gonna stay quiet about what had happened. So that's pretty much the end of the video, and that was done in February. So just to fill in the gaps that this video didn't really cover. So again, this officer was a 240-pound, 6 foot tall, male, Mexican, officer, a CHP officer. So kind of like what we mentioned earlier when we talk about Raza dividing up our communities, and this is like a clear example of that. And the video, when I was talking about how they excluded it from the trial, I'm talking about the trial when the convictions, the charges were being held against me. So I was charged with resisting arrest, a DUI, and vandalism. And so they were offering me deals to take, you know, but they wouldn't want to remove the resisting arrest charge, which was like, you know, resisting arrest can be used as a cover charge when an officer uses excessive force. So if you choose to fight the case in federal court and you have this conviction, you're not able to, there's a case law that protects the officers. So it's kind of like criminalizing the victim. So it's your fault that you got beat up. If you hadn't, you know, tried to, you know, what he says in his report is that I stood out of my chair, I was waving my arms around from left to right, and he told me to stop, and I didn't stop. Instead, I tried to headbutt the officer. And so those are some of this, what went on in court and what was allowed, because outside of the presence of the jury was when this video was excluded on the basis that it was prejudice against the officer. So these are some of the things I've had to face while just simply just trying to seek justice and within this criminal justice system. And so, you know, I lost the 10-day trial. I had to serve 17 days, and the appellate division actually affirmed the decision of the trial court, which means they agree that this video should be excluded. And now I'm taking it a step higher to the Second District Court of Appeals. And so what I did in the meantime, after within the whole appeal process, I actually filed a complaint to the officer's chief, and they exonerated him, and they said, you know, they looked at the video, they said it doesn't look too far off from what his report is. So here the courts are saying that it looks, that we can't show it, you know, it's prejudice, and here the CHP is saying, you know, it matches exactly what the officer says, and then so now I'm in federal court, because if, you see, if the CHP would have held the officer accountable, I don't think I would have had to take this a step further in federal court. So now I'm charging the officer, or not charging, but so many legal terms, but I filed a lawsuit for excessive force. So that's something that I filed this year, and although there's all these losses that have come about in the past 2 years, one small victory, but mostly losses, I continue to speak out and spread awareness of my case, and not only for me, but for all of those who remain silent due to fear. And I'm pretty sure some of us in here in this room if you haven't been beaten, or maybe you didn't come out with a black eye or a bruise or whatnot, but maybe you were harassed. Maybe you were talked to, in a very condescending manner and dehumanized you during a traffic stop, let's say. All these little things that we continue to just kind of like, oh wow, let me just put it behind me and move on with, oh, right, I wanted to be a teacher, so let me just continue that process and let me just forget about this. What that does is when we don't take that extra step to file a complaint or to hold these people accountable, is it allows their behavior to escalate from bad to worse. And so you find these wrongful death cases where these officers are being put on trial, and there's no history of excessive force. There's no history of, there's nothing to help these families seek justice. And it just looks like, and even in this whole process, I've noticed that there are a lot of families standing up for their lost loved ones when they lose somebody to a sheriff, to a local PD. But that's when we're standing up for somebody who has already passed away. What about all those people who are still alive, who know firsthand what it's like when an officer, steps out of line? They're walking around, they're still alive, walking around with shame, humiliation, anger, right? These are all the emotions that still dwell in our communities and that keep our communities oppressed and fear, intimidated. And so I talk about my story to really encourage you, to not only know your rights, and I have some know your rights cards with me, but to exercise them. Like even after this happened to me, I sometimes wonder, I'm on my bike now, I ride my bike in public transportation, and I'm just like, and I'm oftentimes alone, and I worry that if I'm stopped, like what the situation might be because of my like post-traumatic stress or because of this whole reaction, but I always, find a really calming point and really try to exercise your rights no matter what fear comes in. Is like take out your camera, take out that camera, arm yourself with a camera. And because nowadays we have this technology to use and we should use that. Back in like 30 years ago, if you were beaten and there was, no evidence to prove, it really like quiets you down. I know a lot of older men, like 50 and women that are like, have never told their story about what happened because they didn't think that anybody would believe them. Unfortunately, I have a video to prove, what happened, but a lot of the times the youth that I work with, I actually work at the Youth Justice Coalition, the Free LA High School, and so a lot of these students experience it going to school. They're arrested, they're detained, and some of them even have like their uniforms on, and it's there's no evidence, there's nothing to prove. So if we as bystanders had the courage and had the the courage to just take out your phone. We all have camera phones, and yeah, maybe you might be late to work, but just take those 15, 20 minutes because that will, de-escalate the situation most times. And so that's pretty much all I wanted to share. And just, I encourage everybody to get involved. Thank you.